Hello to the Adobe Twitch channel. My name is Terry White, worldwide design and photography evangelist for Adobe, and it's my pleasure streaming to you live here on twitch.tv/Adobe. Today we're going to do this segment on Introduction to Photoshop CC. This is the first of a series of learning streams we're kicking off, and I'm honored to be the first one to do this. This means, and how is this different than all the other Twitch streams I've done and others are doing here on the channel? Well, how it differs is that number one, it's dedicated to a specific topic, in this case, Introduction to Photoshop, over a course of time. So, for example, this course or this learning stream will last 5 weeks. So that means every Tuesday and Friday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, I'll be doing Introduction to Photoshop. So the topics or the features of Photoshop that I'll be showing have been outlined at blogs.adobe.com on the Creative Cloud blog. If you want to go look at and know up front what's going to be covered. And this, again, will last for 5 weeks. So 5 weeks times 2, you'll get 10 classes, 10 one-hour classes on Introduction to Photoshop starting today. So I just finished up the first part of my stream where I showcased some of the Adobe mobile apps on the iPad Pro. Since Apple introduced the iPad Pro 10-inch version yesterday, I thought it would be kind of fun to just show people what they can be doing with the mobile apps that are already optimized on iPad Pro. So that's what I did for the first hour. So now we're ready to kick things off for Photoshop for Beginners. Now, who is this for? This is for beginners. This is for people that are either just now starting to learn Photoshop or haven't touched Photoshop yet, or maybe you've been dabbling in Photoshop but you kind of don't know, you're lost, or you don't know what you're really doing yet. This is not for people that have been using Photoshop for 10 years. So, in other words, if you're here and you're already an existing Photoshop user, that's fine. You can hang out, but this really isn't for you. This is the baby steps for learning Photoshop, and that's what the content will be geared towards. So what I don't need the experts doing in the chat is saying, hey, did you know you could do blah, blah, blah? Yeah, we know that, but this is for intro. All right, so intro Photoshop users, that's what this is for. And here, let me turn this camera up just a little bit, hopefully. There we go. Okay. All right, and Victoria posted the link to the blog, which is awesome, in the chat. So if you're watching this as a video on demand, thank you for watching the video on demand portion of this. Checking the camera. Thank you for watching the video on demand or the replay. If you see me do this, I'm looking over at my chat stream because this was a live broadcast, or is a live broadcast, and there are people, lots of people watching live now that I'll be chatting to and answering questions. Good morning, Rufus. So I'll be saying things like that for the people that are here live. All right. So without further ado, I don't see anything that necessarily I need to jump in on and talk about. Just catching up the chat from the last stream, making sure I didn't miss anything. Good morning, good morning. All right. Okay. I think I got everything covered that I need to cover, so let's go ahead and jump right in. I'm going to show you guys my desktop here. And I'm even going to show you, now today's topic, of course, is Introduction to Photoshop, but today's particular part of Photoshop is getting around in the interface, learning about the interface. Now, that probably won't take an entire hour for me to show you that. Probably will only take, I don't know, a few minutes. So I will be showing you some things along the way. I think some of the things that trip people up about Photoshop, especially when they open up a document, try and open up a second document, try and do things in each document. I'll be showing you guys how to get around some of those pitfalls. All right, let me do one more thing here. Let's also put up let's make it official. We have the Creative Cloud Learning Stream lower third in place now. Okay, let me just make sure. Has it started? You don't see or hear anything. It has started. Can I get a video or audio check from you guys? So put a 1 in the chat if everything's good. Put a 2 in the chat if everything's not good. Victoria's put a 1 in. If I get more 1s than 2s, then I'm going to ask you guys to refresh the page if you're watching this and you're having any issues. All right. I see nothing but 1s so far. And it could be that the 2s just didn't hear me. But the fact that I see the 1s means we're good to go. All right. That's it. We're good to go. We're going to keep going. Okay. So thanks for joining me. My name's Terry White, Worldwide Design and Photography Evangelist for Adobe. And let's kick things off with Introduction to Photoshop. Now, Photoshop is now over 25 years old. It's an application that's grown over the years. It's got a lot of features for a lot of different people. So people always ask things like, well, why does it have this thing I never use? I'm not into 3D. I'm not into this, that, or the other. Because it's a tool that's used by so many different what we call vertical markets. So it's used in medical procedures. It's used in law enforcement. It's used in photography. It's used in graphic design. It's used in digital painting and digital art. It's used across the board. So yeah, there will absolutely be features that you will never, ever, ever have a need to touch because you're not in one of those markets that you don't have that need. But that doesn't mean that you still can't get around and get into the things that you do use all the time and get to those things easier and better. So the first thing I'm going to start off with is, since we're talking about getting around in the interface, is I want to make sure we all start on the same page. And that means we're going to use a built-in preset instead of my custom preset that I normally use. I'm going to use a built-in preset where Photoshop normally starts you off. It's called Essentials. So if you're trying to follow along, if you're not on the Essentials tab, then or Essentials workspace, that means that things might look a little different. They might be in different places. So even if you're on Essentials and things look like they're in different places, what I want you to do is click on Essentials and say Reset Essentials. And what that will do, and see in my case it even made some changes. It put Essentials back to the way it installs, kind of out of the cloud instead of out of the box. All right, so now Essentials is everything's back to normal and everything's back to the way it normally is. Now, sometimes the tools may look a little different because they're going to be where I last left them off. So for example, last time instead of the Move tool, I was using the Artboard tool. So if you see a tool that kind of says, hey, what's that? I don't have that. You'll notice that some of the tools have this little arrow pointing down to the right. So every time you see one of these little arrows pointing down to the right, that typically means in any Adobe interface that there's more tools under that box. So for example, instead of the Artboard tool, you're probably on the Move tool because that's what it defaults to. Instead of the Polygon lasso, you're probably on the regular lasso because that's what it defaults to. So if any of this looks different, that's okay because it just means I'm on a different tool in the set of tools than you are. And you can you can either leave it on yours or switch to the one that I'm showing at any given time. That doesn't mean that you need to switch them all right now because I'm not going to use them all right now anyway. So it's a waste of energy. Now, of course, in Photoshop, as far as the interface is concerned, you have your main canvas area. And I'm going to explain this for Mac users because there's one slight difference for Mac users that has been adopted over the years, but it wasn't always that way. And I still run into people that complain about it, but I'll talk about that in a minute. You have, of course, all the pull-down menus, which we're going to be going through over time. You have the tool panel on the left-hand side. You have the control panel at the top, and you have panels on the right-hand side. These used to be called palettes, but they're now panels, thanks to a lawsuit back in the day with Macromedia, which is a company that's now part of Adobe. But anyway, they're now panels, and that's what they are. And these panels can be torn off. So for example, if you kind of want to separate the layers panel and make it your own and float it, like we normally say floating panels, you can pull that panel off by its name. You can expand it. You can make it bigger. You can change the size of it. You can make that any size or anything you need it to be if you want it separate. If you have another display, like I've got another display, I just put it on the other display. You can't see it, but it's now over there. So if I have multiple displays, I can take advantage of that other display, move all my panels over there so they take up less space. And we used to do that a lot back in the day when displays were a lot smaller. Now it's not as much of a need. All right, so I've got layers, which I now put back over where it was. And I've got workspaces, which we've already talked about. And we've talked about menus. I'm just trying to make sure there's nothing else. Let me make sure I do one more thing real quick here. There we go. And I just want to pull up the bottom of this because sometimes there'll be things at the bottom that we're talking about. Now, how do you get an image into Photoshop? The obvious, most simple way would be to double click on it. If Photoshop is set to be your default image editor, when you double click, it will open in Photoshop. If it's not, that's okay. You can still go to File, choose Open, go find the image you want to open, and open it. Now, there is this older I want to call it an older workflow, but a lot of people are still in love with it. If you're new to Photoshop, not a big deal. You probably don't know or care. But Photoshop used to have, or all of the Creative Suite CS applications used to have a companion app that they used called Bridge. Bridge is still around, Bridge CC, and you can download it as part of your Creative Cloud membership. Bridge CC is available on all memberships, so even if you just have the photography plan, which is Photoshop and Lightroom, you still have access to Bridge if you want it. You can just go download it. Do you need Bridge? No, you don't need Bridge. And if you're new, I don't even know that I'd recommend you install it right off the bat because it's kind of one of those things where it's just another thing you have to learn and manage. You can decide later if it's something you want and something you're going to use. Now, what was Bridge? Bridge was the file browser for Creative Suite back in the day. And it can still be used for Creative Cloud as well. That's why it's still available. What Bridge allows you to do is see thumbnails of all the documents, and then of course if you double click on one, it opens it up in Photoshop. So you could point to a folder, have it show you everything in that folder, and see all the images and open them up. Now Bridge it used to install automatically back when it was first out. Now it is a separate thing you have to install from Creative Cloud if you want it. And again, you don't absolutely have to have it. All right, so instead of me going to File and Open to get an image, I'm actually going to actually use one that's in my library. So libraries are fairly new in Creative Cloud. They're the ability for you to create a library. I think you get one by default called My Library. And you can add images to it or add images, fonts, effects, styles, and colors. To that library so you can use them over and over again. So rather than me having to go find it or open up Bridge or use Lightroom to find an image, I'm just going to double click on one here to open it up in the interface so I can show you actually some things that you'll want to know about inside of Photoshop. It doesn't matter which image you're on right now. I'm just showing you an example. We're not doing anything specific to this image today. But it helps when I have something open to be able to show you how to move around in Photoshop. All right, so now when you open up an image, the first thing you'll notice is that in the Layers panel, you're going to see one of two things. Either you're going to see something most likely called Background, or you're going to see something called Layer 0. Now, why would there be a difference? If you're opening up a JPEG or a RAW file, one that you shot yourself, one from your phone, one from your DSLR, one from your point and shoot, one from any other device, a scan, whatever. 9 times out of 10, it's just going to be background because that's all it is. It's just a background image that you opened up. If it's already been opened in Photoshop once and you've done things to it, then it might be a layer. It might be layer 0, layer 1, a named layer, whatever. It could be a lot of things. But more than likely, I would say probably for beginners, 99% of the time you're going to see background. What does that mean? That means that it's the bottom-most image that you've opened. And since you haven't done anything to it yet, it's the only image. Now, what trips people up a lot in the interface is when they open up more than one image, either on purpose or by accident. So for example, let's say that I open up. So now what happened to my beautiful lake with the tree? It's still there, but your multiple images in Photoshop are opened up in tabs. So Photoshop is now a tabbed interface. So if I go back to this first tab, there is the Folly, Beach, Tree, Driftwood, Ocean, Sunset, Charleston, South Carolina, in case you're searching for Adobe stock and you're looking for this one. Or there's a soccer player in action. So I can go back and forth between these two. Now I'm going to show you one of the first things that people tend to like to want to know how to do with the interface, especially if they have multiple images open. That is, how do I see them both at the same time? In the old days, I could see them both at the same time. How come I can't see them both at the same time now? And you would only be saying the old days if you were already a Photoshop. But if you are new and you're saying, well, I kind of maybe want to do something to the soccer player, but I need to see the tree as well. Then if you go up to your window menu, you have this arrange icon or arrange menu option. And this allows you to tile them in a lot of different ways. So I can tile them, in this case, probably 2 up vertical would look best. Tile them 2 up vertical, now I can see them both at the same time. They're still tabs. They're still the same 2 images. It's just letting me see them both at the same time. It's 2 tabs side by side. So instead of one tab taking up the whole workspace, I now have 2 tabs. So I can scroll this one, and I can scroll this one. I can scroll this one left and right because I'm not seeing it all. Ooh, too far. I can scroll this one left and right because I'm not seeing it all anymore. So you've got 2 independent windows, and you can work on either photo at any time, side by side. And if you have more than 2 open, then that tile would be 3 up vertical, 4 up vertical, 6 up vertical, whatever it would be. If I say consolidate all to tabs, it just puts it back to the way it was. So once again, when I have 2 or more images open, they're open in tabs. If I want to see them all at the same time, arrange under window, tab vertical or horizontal. Horizontal would just stack them on top of each other. Vertical puts them side by side. And I can then see them. Just hang on, I just saw something real quick here. All right, so I can see them side by side. So someone's posted a comment saying, "I got a feeling Bridge is free even if you don't have Creative Cloud or membership." No, Bridge is not free. So Bridge, you can have a trial, but Bridge is not free for ongoing use. Okay. All right. So that again answers the how do I get around 2 images. Now the thing I said I was going to talk about for Mac users that kind of wasn't always this way. Let me go back to consolidate. Notice that Photoshop is a single window application, meaning this window is Photoshop. I can move this entire window around and everything moves with it. That's always been the case on Windows. It wasn't always the case on the Mac. And on the Mac, years ago, there was something introduced in the Adobe apps called the application frame. The application frame is still an option. You don't have to have it this way, although I can't imagine going back. But for those Mac users that are used to being able to see through their application to whatever application is behind it, then you can turn off the application frame. And now there's no more tabs. They work like Windows. And now notice I'm seeing QuickTime in the background. I'm seeing my desktop in the background because there is no more application frame. Photoshop's not a window anymore. I have a window for this document, I have a window for this document, and I'd have a window for any other documents that are open. I can't stand this anymore. I know this is the way it's been on the Mac for years and years and years and years and years, and many applications still work this way. But I can't imagine working in Adobe apps this way anymore. So for those that are used to their Mac looking like this, you can have it this way. For everyone else, including me, I like the application frame on. Simple, clean, everything's in one window, everything moves together. I'm not trying to see what's behind it. If I really need to see what's behind it, I'll move the whole window out of the way. So that's a little bit of nostalgia, a little bit of history for Mac users. Still to this day, say, how come I can't see through Photoshop or see through InDesign? That's why. So just go to Find Application Frame, and if that's what you want, turn it off. All right. Now I'm gonna cover some of the pitfalls that all Photoshop users run into, and it's really about selections. And we're gonna have a whole hour, a whole class on selections. So this won't be the selection class, but I got to kind of show you this because it is part of the interface. It is part of that getting started, and it is part of that frustration that users run into because they don't know what's wrong. And it's nothing's wrong. It's just you've done something, you don't know how to get out of it. All right, so let me quickly just check. Okay, so here's what happens. Whether you did it intentionally or whether you did it by accident, you've selected something. So for example, I've got my lasso tool. And on my lasso tool, I want to go in and select this part of the tree that's under the mist, under the water. Okay, so now I've got that selected. While something is selected in Photoshop, whether it's with any of the selection tools, whether you've done it on purpose or you've done it by accident, and sometimes by accident looks like this. Oh, hang on. Some little thing, little tiny thing selected that's way off to the side that you can't even see. You're zoomed in on another part and you can't even see what that is. And you're trying to do something. You're trying to paint, you're trying to brush, you're trying to clone, you're trying to do something, and nothing's happening. Because while Photoshop has something selected, you can only affect those pixels. So for example, if I go back to the previous example here, I go do this. If I now grab a paintbrush with red paint, that's my red paint color right there, and I make it, I'm going to tell you all this in a second. I make it nice and big, and I now start painting. Nothing's happening. Where's my red? How come I'm not getting red over that tree? Why? Because that area is selected. I cannot paint anything outside of that selected area until I change that selection. So if I paint inside the selected area, there's my red. But notice it stops at the beginning of the selected area and at the bottom of the selected area. I brush past it. It says, no. You can find Photoshop to only work in this selection right now. So, undo. Paint out here, paint out here, paint out here, nothing happens. Paint in there, I can paint in there all day long. And something will. All right. So, how do I get around this intentional or accidental selection? You made a selection. Usually if you did it on purpose, you did it for a reason. When you're done with that selection, and again, we're going to do a whole thing on selections. When you're done with that selection, you need to tell Photoshop to deselect. And that's one of the commands I use literally 1,000,000 times a day, because I'm making selections and deselecting 1,000,000 times a day because I'm done with it. I don't need that tree selected anymore. So I'll show it to you under the menu, and then of course we're going to use the keyboard from here on out. Under the select menu, it's called deselect. When you choose it, oh, it's deselected. Yay! I don't have to worry about that. And I can now paint red anywhere I want now because that area is not selected anymore. If you don't want to have to constantly go to the menu to do it, then you're just going to hit on the Mac, Command D, Windows Control D from the keyboard for deselect. Command D. If I'm zoomed in on a photo and I'm trying to do something and I do it a couple times and nothing's happening, I just instinctively, I don't even bother trying to go look for where the selection is. Command D. And then now I can paint, because what I know 9 times out of 10 is there's still a selection somewhere else in the photo. So for example, and this is what I mean by zoomed in. I got that selected and I forgot about it or did it by accident. Now I zoom in to work on this part of the tree. And I go here and I hit my brush and I'm painting and nothing's happening. I don't even think twice. It's like I might try it one more time. Oh, it's not painting? 9 times out of 10, something's somewhere. Command D. Now I can paint. So I don't have to zoom out, find it, and click on it. I don't have to click a selection tool and click somewhere else. Just deselect, and you'll be able to continue on working in Photoshop where you want to work. All right, so we covered a couple things already, so let's get to those things. Let me explain what they are. First and foremost, zooming is a big part of Photoshop. Zooming in and out. Now, there is a zoom tool. I'm going to show you how it works. And again, we're going to do a whole segment on tools as well. Oh, Star Crunch, you didn't know that. Well, select, again, it happens a million times a day for me. All right, so when you click on your zoom tool, your magnifying tool, it works a couple of ways. I'm going to show you a shortcut for how it works that's even better. But first, people instinctively say, oh, I want to get to the top of the tree. They click. That works fine. Click again, and they click until they get as far in as they're like, oh no, now what do I do? I need to zoom out. And notice that the tool itself has a plus sign on it. Whenever a tool has a plus sign on it, that means it usually has an opposite. It has a minus symbol as well. So holding down my Option or Alt key will usually 99% of the time toggle the tool to do the opposite of whatever it's doing. So for example, in this case, if I want to zoom out, hold down the Option or Alt key and click again. Now I'm zoomed out. All right. So that's the 1986 way of working in Photoshop, or 1991 way of working in Photoshop. We don't usually click like that anymore because there's a much better fluid way of doing it. Instead of clicking the tool to zoom 3 or 4 times to zoom in, just click and drag. So for example, if I want to zoom into the top of the tree, click, drag, zooms in fluidly. And wait, go back. Oh no. Just let go of the mouse. And if you go back the other way, you can zoom out. So zoom in or zoom out just by dragging diagonally into to where you're trying to get to, or diagonally away from whatever it is you're trying to get to. And that will let you zoom in and zoom out quickly and easily. That's so much faster than click, Option, click. So zooming out, I didn't have to hold down, I'm not holding down any keys. I'm just zooming in and zooming out, drilling down into the photo or out away from the photo. And that works in either direction. So if I zoom in, I'm dragging into the photo. If I want to zoom out, I'm dragging away from the photo. And it knows to zoom out that way. So I'm dragging to the right, which is into the photo, or to the left, away from the photo. It's easier to think about it diagonally, zooming, or up and down, zooming in and out, as opposed to left and right. Left and right can get confusing really quick. But just the opposite of whichever direction you were dragging in. Yes. People are still commenting, by the way, for people watching the replay, on how many times we go to do something and we can't because something else is selected and we just forget. Command D, or Control D on Windows, really quick. All right, so those are a couple ways to zoom. Now, when I'm zoomed in like this, and I want to quickly zoom back out to see the whole image, I don't usually reach for the zoom tool, especially if I'm already on another, like for example, if I'm in here painting. I'm not going to think okay, click the zoom tool to zoom out. What I'm going to do most likely is hit a keyboard shortcut that always fits the image down to the full size, or to show me the full image. So in this case, we're going to use Command on Mac, Control on PC, Control 0. That will always zoom the photo, no matter how much you're zoomed in, to fit the screen. So I can always see the top, left, bottom, and right. So if I'm, hang on for a second. Hold on. I want to show you something. I'm forgetting myself how I do it. Okay, let me zoomed in. All right. Okay. Next thing, once you're zoomed in, maybe you don't need to zoom all the way out, but you just want to move over the photo. So obviously you can scroll the photo. You can move over to the other section. You can move up and down using the scroll bars. That will always work. But instead of me reaching for the scroll bars, another way to remember to do it is there is a tool for panning around. Here, let me see. It's called the hand tool. The hand tool lets you push or move the canvas around with your hand. So you don't have to reach for a scroll bar. But let's say I'm over here and I'm cloning or painting or doing something, and I want to move over a little bit because I'm running out of screen. Let's say I'm doing it right here. And I know there's more branch. I just need to move over a little bit. Well, instead of me having to go back to the hand tool, move it, or a scroll bar and move it, and then go back to the tool I was working on, the space bar will always temporarily give you the hand tool. So if I hold down the space bar, I can move it over, let go of the space bar, keep painting. Hold down the space bar, move it over, let go of the space bar, keep painting. So if that's what I want, I can go ahead and move over, paint some more. Move over and paint some more. So your space bar, since your other hand is usually free anyway, just hold on your space bar, and that way you can quickly move around the canvas while you're zoomed in. Command 0 zooms you out, and of course the zoom tool zooms you in. All right, so those are some quick ways of getting around in the interface. All right, reading the comment real quick. Bell Ray, I don't know. Blurray, I don't know how to get rid of that one. So sorry, I don't know how to solve that off the top of my head. Um, yeah, don't know. All right. Yes, step 1, get furious. Step 2, control D. Step 3, laugh at yourself. I love that. Okay, so that's zooming, panning around. Um, there was something else that you just reminded me. Okay, so let's. I don't know if I want to do that right now or not. Let's talk about. I'm going to stick to. Never mind. I'm going to stick to the topic at hand. I'm going to continue moving around. All right. Oh yeah, I should probably tell you guys about that one since people run into it by accident too. All right. Um, there is a mode in Photoshop called Quick Mask, and it's another one of those usually by accident kind of things because I'm probably dare say that most people don't use Quick Mask as much as they used to. What Quick Mask was designed to do is let you mask a photo with your painting tools quickly. So for example, if I'm on a paintbrush and notice I've got brown or purple paint selected, if I start painting right now, it's painting in that brown or purple paint. That's great. But look and see what's happening now. Notice it's painting in red, and I'm like, well, I don't have red selected. Wait, what happened to my colors? Why is my color black and white? That's because at some point I accidentally entered Quick Mask mode. How do you accidentally or purposely enter Quick Mask mode? You hit the letter Q by accident. So you hit the keyboard by your finger, hit a key, or you were typing something in another program, you came back to Photoshop and hit Q by mistake. So notice here's how you'll know you're in Quick Mask. Over here, your foreground and background colors. Hang on, let me zoom back out. Your foreground and background colors are usually some color, like they're sometimes they're black and white, which is the default, but they're usually a color. Um, and here, let me just to make it a color. Okay, when you don't see a color, that's your first clue. In other words, you know you chose red, green, blue, orange, whatever, and you look over here and it's black. That's your first clue you're in Quick Mask. But the biggest clue is the Quick Mask icon is illuminated. And the shortcut for Quick Mask is Q. So when you see that that's highlighted and it's black and white, you know you're masking now. And what this was designed to do is, back in the old days for making selections, you would have used this to mask or select with a brush the area that you wanted selected. So this is actually making a selection as opposed to, see, as opposed to painting a color. We don't, I shouldn't say we. I'd forgotten Quick Mask was even a feature because it's been so long since I used it. But the other day, someone was saying, hey, I'm in this stupid mode. I can't get out of it. Every time I'm painting, it's not painting the color. It's doing some selection. And I was like, oh, you mean Quick Mask? Because it had been so long. So again, I'm selected, Command D, and hit Q to get in or out of Quick Mask. And when we go over selections in the upcoming segment that we're going to do selections in, there are many, 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 many better ways of doing selections than Quick Mask. There are some uses for it, I imagine, but it's really, really old school. So that is Quick Mask mode. All right. You always accidentally enter some mode you didn't know existed. Well, it threw me for a while because it's been like 10, 15 years since I used Quick Mask, so I couldn't even think about what the person was talking about right away. And then I thought, oh, Q, Quick Mask, on and off. All right, back to the interface. So we talked about selections, talked about getting out of selections, we talked about getting out of Quick Mask mode. Now let's talk about undo. This is another one that people, as far as the interface is concerned, they get tripped up on all the time. Believe it or not, when Photoshop first started back in its 1.0 days, 2.0 days, 3.0 days, for a long time, Photoshop only had one undo. So you had to really be careful about what you were doing, and you had to work in layers when layers came out in 3.0. And can you imagine the pain before 3.0 of no layers and one undo? You had to be like, you either did a lot of stuff over again or you had to really, really, really be careful. So for example, let's say, because now we don't have those problems. Let's say I pick a color here, and don't ask me why I'm painting this tree green. But anyway, I paint this tree green, which I would not do. That doesn't look good. And I'm not on a layer. I'm on the background. And then yeah, that looks okay. It doesn't. But yeah, that looks okay. And I come over here and paint this one green. Oh yeah, that looks awesome. And then I come over here and do this one. And then someone comes in there and says, are you on drugs? Like, literally, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? This looks horrible. And it's like, oh no, I did this on the background. I didn't make a layer first. I know, undo. Undo, yay, undo again. Wait, what? Command Z, undo, yay. Command Z. So, Command Z or PC Control Z is still reminiscent from the early days of Photoshop when you only had one undo. So it was toggling between undo and redo. It's still that way to this day. Undo, redo, undo, redo. Because that's all Command Z will give you is one undo. But Photoshop has history. So that means that, yes, you can go back beyond the one undo, but you just don't do it with Command Z. So if you go under your edit menu, you'll see that there is a undo, and that will always undo the last thing you did, like it did back in the 90s. But there's also step backward, which is your multiple undo feature. So for example, I did Option Z or Control Alt Z is your step backward. And there's a step forward as well. Command Shift Z will put them back. So Command Option Z, Control Alt Z on Windows is your multiple undo feature. Photoshop, how many undos does it have then? Because we're in the age of 2016 where we expect applications to have unlimited undos. Like why would there be a limit today? Photoshop has always, even with history, has always had a limit because Photoshop is a very, 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 very memory intensive program if you're working on very, very large files. So most people just don't have enough RAM to have unlimited undos. So if you go to your, I just want to check something here. If you go to your history panel, I'm just trying to see if this option is still here. Your history panel, history options. Trying to see if there's still that number limit. Hang on for a second here. History. I don't want to go down this rabbit hole too long, but there's a log. I can't remember if we're now at the point. Okay. If we're at the point, it's not unlimited, it's 1,000 now. And I'm trying to even think if there's a way now to even get to the number itself. History states. Okay, there we go. So it's under performance, and history states right now defaults to 50. But I can go up to 1,000. And again, this is based on your RAM. So back when history first came out, it was limited to 20. So as machines got better and Photoshop got better at managing memory, they limit now to 50. So you can go back, even without touching this, the last 50 steps you did. And why don't they just set it to 1,000? Because then it's going to have to remember the last 1,000 things you did. And do you really make 1,000 mistakes? So 50 is probably a good number for most people. I can't remember too many times where I've Control Alt Z, Option Z, like, and oh no, I need to go back 3 more. Like, if I've gone down a bad path where I've done 50 mistakes, undo probably is the best option. So if you need more than 50, that's where you go change it to a higher number. But chances are 50 is probably good enough for most people. Because now we're working in more non-destructively anyway. We work with layers. We work with smart objects. We work with a lot of things that don't require as many undos. So 50 is probably a good happy medium for most people. You can make 1,000 mistakes. All right. Okay. Good. All right. Okay. So someone's asking about color, which again I don't want to, because we're gonna do a whole section on that. I just didn't want to dive down too deeply on it right now, but we can address some of this right now. Okay. I know once I start down, I'm pausing because once I start down this path, it's gonna take us down a long path. Okay. I was working with over here because, and I'm only answering it now because people are asking it in the comments. What we were working with a minute ago was I chose a green foreground color. You notice you have 2 squares. You have foreground and background. Right now my foreground is some shade of green and my background is white. What are those colors? What's the difference? Why do you have 2? Why is there a background color? Let me change the background color, and this way you'll understand what we mean. If I'll change the background color to shade of red. So now I got green on the foreground, red on the background. What does that mean? If you are working on your image with any of the tools that work with color, chances are it's going to use the foreground color. So if I'm on a paintbrush, I paint, that's in green. That's the foreground color. When does it ever use the red? When you remove pixels. So for example, if I were to go to a tool I rarely use, the eraser tool, and I make the brush bigger, and I erase. It looks like I painted in red, but it didn't. It erased those pixels and put red in the background. So by default, your background color is white. So if you erase, you get a white canvas. And if you paint, you're painting in black because that's your foreground color. So that's the difference between those two. Again, the concept of a background color is not as, we still use it, but it's not as frequent anymore than what it used to be. This is why I didn't want to go down this path. All right. Anyway. What is a smart object? We're going to talk about that in another segment on layers. Again, intro, we're not going to cram it all in one day in the first hour. But smart objects is coming up, not today, but not in another segment. When we talk about layering, we'll do all the smart object things and all the things about layers. Okay, one last thing is that if you want to, since we did talk about these colors, and we're going to do a whole section on tools. So again, we're not going to cover all the tools today. If you do get into a section where you've chosen two colors and you want to toggle them, so I'll just finish up on this one segment of colors real quick. You've got your foreground color, your background color, your black, the little tiny black and white square, which always resets it back to the default white. And then you've got that little curved arrow. That little curved arrow toggles your foreground to your background to your foreground. It just switches them. So if I toggle again, it switches them back. If I switch to black and white, they're black and white now. If I tap the foreground color, or the background color in this foreground color in this case, then I can pick a color of my choice. Did I not pick it? There we go. If I tap the background color, same thing. I can pick a background color of my choice. So that's that little section of the tool panel that we really weren't supposed to cover today. But since so many people were asking about colors, you did. Or we did. Lots of people saying, oh, I didn't know that. Oh, okay, cool. Cool. That's what this learning stream is all about. Okay, we talked, let's get back to the interface, which is the task at hand. Notice I've been using the Essentials tools workspace pretty much the way it was. I showed you how you can pull off panels. You also can pull off your tools or arrange your tools differently. So in the upper left corner of the tool panel, there's a double arrow. If you tap the double arrow, that will give you a 2-column tool panel. Tap it again, it gives you a single column tool panel. Why would you ever want a 2-column tool panel? If you have a big display, you probably don't. If you have a smaller laptop display that's shorter, the dual column tool panel lets you see all the without having to scroll or position around. So it was originally Photoshop and all the Adobe products were all 2-column tool panels. And then we had, over the years, adopted interfaces that let you go to a single column, single row across the top, so forth and so on. But that's still there, and I rarely ever change it. But if I'm on a small display, a display that doesn't have a lot of resolution, then I'm going to switch to that 2-column tool panel. All right, what did I just do? I think I pulled it out. All right, let's put that back. Okay. I'm just trying to think interface-wise, is there anything else I want to make sure I get out of the way real quick? Multiple documents. We'll do that. We'll do tools. We'll do layers in another segment. Oh yeah, okay. This is pretty good. We need to do this too. Since we're talking about the interface, this last icon on the bottom of the tool panel is a toggle between the various screen modes. And a friend of mine, Scott Kelby, who's a Photoshop instructor, kelby.com, I've been watching Scott for years and years and years. And he was the first one that I really saw taking advantage of this every time he showed off a photo in Photoshop. Because what happened is you have all this interface around your photo and you did something and you kind of want to see your photo and you don't want anyone, like let's say you have someone walk up to your screen and say, here, let me show you this, come on over. And they walk over, you kind of don't, they don't really need to see all that other stuff. So what you can do quickly is hit the F key on your keyboard twice. If you hit your F key, it toggles off everything else in Photoshop to where you're now just looking at your image. Hit the F key again, it toggles everything back on. So, first F key toggles off, I can't, I have to go back and look. It toggles off the control, toggles off the menus at the top. So, first F key toggles off at the top, the control panel. Second one just goes full screen. So that's what the F is for, full screen. So it's two toggles. FF will take you to complete full screen, and F again will take you back. Speaking along those lines, there's another one that gets people tripped up where they didn't hit F by mistake, they hit Tab by mistake. And this is an old Adobe interface thing for all the Adobe products, that Tab turns off the panels. So if you hit Tab by mistake or on purpose, you're telling it to turn off the panel, the tool panels and the side panels. Hitting Tab again will turn them back on. The only time that does not happen is when you're typing text, obviously. If you're in the text tool or the type tool and you're typing, hitting Tab tabs. But if you're not in the type tool in any of the programs, hitting Tab hides the panels and brings them back. So one more. That was one more interface thing. That's right. 8 more minutes. We're going to be up for Molten Ink. Who's next? All right. Okay. Looks like we got everything there. Um, Talked about the undos. Talked about the tools. I'm just making sure I covered everything before we wrap this up. And also checking for questions here. All right. Let's cover, since we have a few minutes here, let's cover one more thing that has to do with the interface, and we'll talk about the workspaces. Because I had you start off on the Essentials workspace, or I switched back to the Essentials workspace because that's where Photoshop starts everyone off until I change it. Now, what Essentials means is it's the workspace that gives you the tools and panels that most people need to work in Photoshop right off the bat. These aren't the only tools, these aren't the only panels, these aren't the only things that people can do. So that's why under the workspace menu, there are some other workspaces that are for the other that people might be doing. There's a 3D workspace that turns on all the panels for 3D. There's a graphic and web workspace that turns on the transformation panel, starts working with the artboard, so forth and so on. Motion panel for people that are doing video work that turns on maybe the timeline and other things like that. There's a painting panel that brings up the brushes panel and all the things that are for digital painting. And there's a photography panel. Since I'm a photographer, that's kind of where I start with. So when I bring up the photography workflow, workspace, the main thing it kind of changes is it brings up the histogram and the navigator panel. If I switch to motion, for example, it'll bring up the timeline for people that are creating video. Photoshop does work with video. So just keep in mind that if you are working as a particular one of these categories, like you're a motion designer, you're a photographer, you're a graphic designer, I would start on that workspace. You can also customize them. For example, on the photography panel, the photography workspace, I may want a panel up. And for example, we talked about the history panel. I don't need the history panel, but just using this as an example. So I've now brought up the history panel and I'm going to put it down here. I can rearrange these panels and put them in any order I want. So I took away from the actions panel and merged it with layers, channels, paths, so forth and so on. And let's say as a photographer, I don't ever work with the paths panel. So I'm going to go ahead and turn that off. So now I've taken photography, the original workspace, and I've customized it to be different than photography. Now, even though it still says photography up there, Photoshop's not going to change the workspace at all unless you reset it. If I now say reset photography, history is going to go back where it was, paths is going to come back, everything's going to come back to the way it was. And if I like this workspace that I've now customized starting with photography, then I probably want to create a new workspace that doesn't get accidentally reset. I don't want to lose my changes. So if I create a new workspace called photography on Twitch, then I can also say that it affects the menus, toolbar, and keyboard shortcuts. And now that becomes my new workspace, and I don't have to worry about the photography one going back to its original defaults or making any further changes to it. So just keep in mind that you can make your own workspace changes. Now that menu also brought up another thing that I wanted to talk about today, and that is keyboard shortcuts. So we talked about Command D for deselect, and we talked about Command Shift Z for going back in history states, or Command Option Z for going back in history states, and Command Shift Z for going forward. Well, that means that Photoshop has hundreds and hundreds of keyboard shortcuts. And these keyboard shortcuts, for example, if I go to Edit, Undo, there it is, Command Z. And there's step forward and step backward and so forth and so on. But any of these can be customized to what you want them to be. I'm going to recommend for beginners not to make changes to them right away, because any tutorials you watch, anybody that ever talks about keyboard shortcuts is 9 times out of 10 going to be talking about the default ones. But as you go forward in time and you get better at it, and you know what you're doing with keyboard shortcuts, you can, just like we made a custom workspace, you can make a custom set of keyboards or keyboard shortcuts and save it, and it'll be like, for example, Terry White's keyboard shortcuts. And you can change these to be any of these to be whatever you want them to be. Or if there's a function that doesn't have a keyboard shortcut, the reason it probably doesn't have one is they're all taken. You can assign a keyboard shortcut to it, and if you assign one that's already taken, it's going to say, hey, this is being used by whatever. Do you want to make the change? And you can say yes and make your own keyboard shortcuts. So guys, we're just about at the top of the hour where Molten Ink is going to take over next. And hopefully you learned a couple things for those of you who are new to Photoshop. This will continue on Friday, same time, same channel. And for the next 5 weeks, twice a week, we'll do Intro to Photoshop. And every hour we do this, we'll cover a different topic. So today was just getting your feet wet in the interface. We have an upcoming topic on layers. We have an upcoming topic on the tools that people use the most. We have an upcoming topic, I think, on compositing. We have an upcoming topic on all the things that beginners usually want to know how to do. Today's hour was dedicated to the interface and the things that usually trip people up in the interface. So that's it. That's my time. Take care. We'll catch you on Friday. Thanks for watching, and thanks for watching the replay if you're a replay watcher. Cheers.